Adam Engst on the Apple Far Out announcements. This is Mac Voices. Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like Mac Voices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for Mac Voices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joiner. Folks, it's a special night. It is Friday after the Apple Far Out event a little bit earlier this week. It is a few hours after the iPhone 14 pre-orders started, and we are live with the Long Island Macintosh user group. Long Island, thank you so much for having us. It's great to see you all. And we've asked them to mute their mics, so we'll have them unmute when they have questions. Joining us, though, tonight is somebody just as special. I understand he was at a dinner tonight. I'm not sure if he was being honored. He's not in a tux. Mr. Adam Engst.
Thank you, Chuck. No, it was actually a dinner that Tanya and I were organizing for our cross-country teams, which... you get those family things, which you don't even really think, just something you're doing and you've been talking about it for weeks and whatnot. And so Wednesday, when I got the email with the Zoom details, I'm like, something happening Friday night. Oh no, completely double scheduled. So it was, but it worked out fine. We pushed the time back. Thank you all for allowing me to stay at my dinner for a little bit longer and talk to everybody. So it was great fun, but I am here now and happy to chat about Apple stuff.
Hey.
Which is all I've been doing for the last 2 days. So I've been living this stuff. So many details in my brain.
Yeah, I mean, is there anything worth talking about, Adam?
I have to say, Apple's gotten so good at this. They know how to pace their announcements so that there's always something you've got to talk about. And then Siri just decided to talk to me. Stop it, Siri.
That's all right.
So it was interesting watching, the keynote stuff because some of the stuff was not that interesting. And others were like, holy cow, they can do that? Who knew? So, I mean, point your phone at the satellite and that's going to work? Really? I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever get to use it, but I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, you're just going to have to start running trails and doing things that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise. And now, if you need to be rescued,
I do all that. I just prefer not to be rescued. and who's going to test the emergency SOS to the satellite? Talk about taking one for science. They're gonna they send a helicopter out for you. They're going to be really, really angry if they discover you're a tech journalist just seeing if it worked.
Yeah, but that was Siri in the early days. When it would dial 911, and I distinctly remember a lot of complaints coming in from emergency services about not let's just say misdialed Siri emergency notifications.
Yeah. And I actually talked to a friend of mine who is a mountain rescue person. In fact, not currently, but has been fairly recently, and he's still an EMT and a paramedic, and does the whole thing. And I was asking him if he thought this would increase the number of calls, and he actually said no. That and I'd heard that cell phones in general did this too. People go out for a day hike and wear shorts and a t-shirt and just not really think about what they might happen and get up on the top of a mountain and get stuck and then have to use their cell phone to call for emergency rescue. And he said that actually wasn't the case. It didn't increase the level of calls. What it did is it decreased the level of severity necessary. So if you sprained your ankle, you might call for a helicopter, whereas in the past you would have hobbled down. And so he thinks that there might be, a little bit more in terms of stuff that probably not as serious as people think it is, but they have an option to call for help, so they're going to.
Your comment about some of the announcements being boring and some not. I've had numerous conversations like you over the past few days, and it seems like there's a big disagreement going on about what the best, most important announcements were. That, if it's something that applied to me, oh my God, it's super important. But if it didn't apply to me, then it didn't mean anything. Where do you stand on it? What would you say was if you had to pick one, was the most important announcement?
Well, so I mean, you're absolutely right. That if you're looking for a new iPhone that's not going to break the bank, and you don't need all the whiz bang stuff in the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max, then you might have been super interested in the iPhone 14, or maybe you're so pleased that they have an iPhone 14 Plus now because you didn't want to spend all the money on an iPhone 14 Pro Max to get the big screen. So you are correct in that regard. I think from the perspective of boring, for those of us who are in the industry, is stuff that doesn't change very much. And so the iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus, for instance, they aren't that significant changes from the iPhone 13s. And so they share the same chip. The form factor is basically the same. The cameras are basically the same. I mean, a little improved, but not hugely so. And so, from the perspective of people who are looking at this stuff all the time, okay, I've slotted it into. I understand what this is because we already had it. Then you look at something like the iPhone 14 Pro with the dynamic island, which is the strangest name for a feature, but nonetheless, and the emergency SOS via satellite, the crash detection, which admittedly are in the iPhone 14 as well, and the always on screen, and you're like, oh, that's something which I don't have a previous model of in my head. So that's what attracts your attention, and you're like, how is that going to change the experience? And in fact, I just ordered myself an iPhone 14 Pro this morning, not because this iPhone 13 Pro has anything wrong with it, but because in what I do, I am curious how the always-on display and the dynamic island in particular change the experience of being an iPhone user. That's something which is of value to me in my job. And so it's worth it to me to upgrade for that alone, even though, realistically, I don't need the other features. And those features are not going to change my life in all likelihood. I just more of a research project for me. So that said, I think the other big one, obviously, is the Apple Watch Ultra, which we all know what the Apple Watch, SE, again, boring, just a little bit upgraded. We know what it means. We understand what it does. Series 8, same thing. Nice couple new features, but we understand the concept. And then the Apple Watch Ultra, you're like, okay, wow, there's all these great details. I got to think about what this means, what this is going to happen, how this is going to happen, what it's going to change about the world because this thing is now available. And so that's really when I think we talk about boring, what we mean is, does this change the way we think about the world? And, the iPhone 14 Pros and the Apple Watch Ultras might. The AirPods, second generation AirPods, no, they don't change the way we think about the world. They're nice. Great. Buy them. If you need new AirPods, buy the second generation AirPods Pro. They're good. And it's not like we have to think hard about how they're different from the previous ones, because they're just a little better in a couple of different ways.
Okay, since you went there, we'll just start with this. Where do you stand on Dynamic Island? Is it a gimmick? Is it a truly innovative feature? I think our friend Andy Anako was the first one I saw that said something along the lines of, leave it to Apple to take, what was kind of a necessity and a blemish that, a lot of people saw that and turn it into a feature.
Oh, I think it's brilliant. I mean, I want to know how it works, right? That's why I ordered the iPhone 14 Pro. I want to see how it works in real life, but I think it's absolutely brilliant for them to have taken this essentially dead space in the screen and built it into the design of another feature, such that it no longer, not that again, I've had an iPhone 10 and I forget which, 11, I guess I had a 10 and then an 11, then a 13. So I'm used to the notch. I don't even notice it, but nonetheless, to take that dead space and make it part of the design is truly clever. And I think that, and particularly when you couple it with the always on display, so that, you could just have, like if you're the sort who has to watch sports scores or something like that, you could have the live activities just showing you the scores while the iPhone sits on your desk. And that's pretty neat. That, again, may not be the sort of thing we want to recommend, but it's certainly, if you're the sort of person who's always checking your phone to see what the score is in the game, that might be a feature that would actually be really valuable to you. But the question is, how seamless is it? Does it really feel like, wow, alerts just kind of come out of the little sensor package pill lozenge thing and go back into it? Or does it feel like, why is it weird there's still nothing showing there? And we'll see. I think, knowing Apple, I suspect they've done a pretty good job on it, because they're usually very good at making you, what's the word? Think about like the Force Touch trackpads, where it doesn't actually push, but you feel it. They're simulating reality. And I think it's going to be the same thing with Dynamic Island, where they're simulating this as being a functional part of the screen, even though it's not, and you're not going to notice because they've done such a good job, is my guess.
Okay. I agree with you. I'm anxious. I ordered an iPhone 14 Pro Max this morning at 8:01 a.m.
You have larger pockets than I do.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit in my pocket. I'm like, oh, man.
Yeah.
If they had a mini with the good cameras, I'd be all over it.
Adam, the one thing though, and this was part of another discussion I had earlier this week after it was announced, that, okay, this is great. And, it may be a little experimental, but, some people are really pro, some people are not so pro. But the point that was brought up that I thought was interesting is, okay, so this is on the pro models now. What happens to those? Does somebody with an iPhone 14, not Pro, where do those announcements go, or those notifications go, or are they just not available to the users who do not opt to go Pro?
It's a good question. Obviously, most things will just be normal. They have, iPhones have alerts and announcements now. And the new thing is this live activities notification type, which comes in iOS 16. And I don't know how what you see when you're using the iPhone in iOS 16 for live activities notification. I have the release candidate on my 13 here, but I haven't done it for long enough to have seen one of those. I haven't had a chance to that. My understanding is that those will mostly appear on the lock screen. So the live activity stuff will, you'll be able to tap the screen of or raise your iPhone and see it on the lock screen without unlocking or opening it. But you won't be able to sort of have it constantly updating on the always on screen. So, I think there's two important technology aspects to the Dynamic Island. One is Apple had to shrink those sensors into a smaller package and get them into the screen and in the screen area in a useful way. That's, again, we're past magic for what the kind of things they're doing here. And then secondly, you need the A16 Bionic chip with its power efficiency and capability of controlling the screen down, moving the screen down to like 1 hertz of refresh rate. It's incredibly slow, so it's very battery efficient. And then to be able to support this stuff just playing on the screen without actually sucking down your battery. And so I think that it does make sense that it's only in the 14 Pro and Pro Max. And I suspect that it will simply not be as big a deal on the other ones, that we just won't really notice. Now, the alerts that I'm looking forward to seeing the end of, and I'll be really curious if the Dynamic Island takes care of these, is when you unlock your Apple Watch by looking at your phone, For me, it's first thing in the morning usually. You get this kind of drop down alert which says unlocking Apple Watch, and then it says unlocked Apple Watch. I'm like, get out of my face! You're always in the way of something I want to see. And if you move it too quickly, if you get irritated at it, move it too quickly, it stops the unlock of your Apple Watch. And I'm like, I don't care about this at all. Why are you notifying me? You just unlock my freaking Apple Watch in the background without telling me. I'll notice that it's unlocked, and if it doesn't unlock, you don't have to tell me. It becomes obvious the next time you look at your watch. So it's a completely wasted notification. And so I'm kind of hoping that the dynamic island somehow, or iOS 16, can't remember if it's changed it in my 13. I'm hoping the dynamic island sort of improves that experience, because it really bothers me when it covers over a portion of an app that I'm actually using.
You've gone exactly to what I'm hoping for myself with the dynamic island, that notifications that previously took up too much of the screen or interrupted what I was doing will just kind of appear up there in the little lozenge and let me know that it's happening. And from what I've read so far, and maybe but it sounds like you'll be able to tap on that and I guess go to whatever the app is generating, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Precisely. And again, what you'll tap on is what you see, which is actually off to the right or the left of the lozenge, right? Because that lozenge is dead. There's nothing in there. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I don't know that. That's an interesting question. I don't know that. In other words, what does happen when you tap on the black part in the middle, which isn't screen? I don't know the answer to that, but it's an interesting question. Will that take taps? Because it wouldn't make sense for it to take taps, but on the other hand, maybe Apple's got, as has the whole thing, making that available as a target. We'll see. Yeah.
I mean, if somebody reaches up and, if the camera sees the finger coming, it says, "Oh, it's going
right now."
It thinks it's a tap. Me. Oh my God! Here it comes.
Touch me! You're gonna get a fingerprint on me. Stop it.
Well, yeah, and that's another thing that was brought up. Is fingerprints on that selfie camera? Is that an issue at this point? I don't know.
Whatever. Say your selfie's a little fuzzy. Get over it. I mean, clean your screen. Get off my lawn. I got no sympathy. Yeah, right.
Okay, yeah.
You got it right. Clean your freaking screen. Don't complain.
Very nice.
I mean, there is a little level of, if you're going to be touching the camera but I have this problem too. I mean, you get all sorts of touching on the back of this, and every now and then I think I kind of clean it with my shirt tail. Because I don't know when the last time I might have touched those camera lenses is. So yeah, I think that just falls into basic iPhone hygiene, folks.
Yep. There's a phrase I've never heard before.
I feel like I'm channeling one of those, public service talks from, grade school. Let's talk about hygiene, class.
Okay, so that's Dynamic Island. So one of the other big things.
And can you get voted off?
Yeah, oh gee, don't start that. Is the camera especially the Pro camera. Now we have 48 megapixels, and there were some things coming out today. Finally, something that Apple didn't talk about in the announcement, that the Pro RAW version of photos that you take with this camera are 3 times as large, data-wise, as
I would assume
the iPhone 13. So that's. I mean, I don't mind telling you, I ordered a 1 terabyte for more for video reasons than for still photos. Yeah. But this is turning into a pretty darn impressive camera, and an impressive set of options that you're going to be carrying around with you anywhere you go.
Yeah. No, I mean, I at this point, I know the specs. I take a lot of photos. I appreciate them. And I wait until the big photo sites do their reviews, because you want to talk magic. I mean, the computational photography that's going on here, it is not predictable, in the sense of, we know it's going to be better because Apple has put an incredible amount of engineering into it, but we don't know how much, in what ways, are there gotchas, things like that. So, for instance, this issue of file size. So it's a 48 megapixel camera with what Apple calls a quad pixel sensor. And what that means is they take 4 pixels in a square and combine them into one. And that brings the file size of the photo down to the same as we would if it's a 12 megapixel camera. And because you've got 4 pixels, 4 units on the CCD, 4 pixels in the sensor, picking up light, it, at least according to Apple, increases the amount of light that single pixel would otherwise have captured. And so they claim this will help in low light situations. Apple put a great deal of effort into talking about improvements in mid and low light in particular. We've also got the Photonic Engine, which is the most Star Trek-like product name, and way better than Dynamic Island, I would just say. I mean, if we're talking TV shows, I'm going with Photonic Engine rather than Dynamic Island. So, but so the 48 megapixel camera is a really interesting thing because, again, it's Apple taking raw technology and using a vast amount of computation to do things with it, do stuff with it that I don't think anyone would have thought was possible. And so we will have to see, once the really serious photographers get their hands on this and put it through their tests, how it all works and if it's as successful as Apple says it is. What you were referring to, the file size, if you get a Pro Raw image, and Apple didn't say how big it was going to be, but we're like, yeah, it's going to be big. So yeah, it's going to be really big because that's, full 48 megapixels is a lot of data. And so if you're either a professional photographer or at least someone who cares very deeply about your raw images and wants to do post-processing and have the most amount of control, yeah, probably you're going to go for it. You're going to take the hit on file size and get a vast amount of detail that you can then fuss with in post-processing. And I imagine people are going to absolutely adore that. Personally, I'm never going to use it. I'm not a raw guy. I'm perfectly happy to let Apple control my photos, and I'll take what they give me.
Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued to see what happens when you turn on the iCloud Photos option, and what. Is it going to take all the ProRes information and send it to the cloud? Because if so, you better have that 2 terabyte option. Up there.
I can't see any reason why it wouldn't do it. There's no reason why iCloud Photos should be sampling you in any way.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't shoot RAW, so I don't know. But I can't see why they would change that. And so, right, you better have plenty of iCloud space and be ready, and also have connectivity to deal with it too. So, I mean, if you're, you may be filling up your internal storage and then transferring once you get back to civilization if you're not on Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I predict that we're going to see a slew of dedicated devices to offload photos from these cameras.
I think those already exist for serious photographers. I again, not my world. So I mean, they used to exist for standard DSLRs and other older cameras. So I sort of can't imagine that they don't still exist for people who are like, yeah, I'm going to be on a 2-week camping trip and taking a lot of photos, and I need something to offload to. So yeah. I'm sure that those capabilities are there.
Yeah, I just think it'll become a lot more widespread now.
Yeah,
with some of these capabilities. Yeah. I agree with you on the Photonic Engine. I love the Photonic. I just love the fact that I will have a Photonic Engine in my phone.
It's like, clearly, we need one in the DeLorean, and then we'll be able to do time travel too. So
I'm just looking over my notes from the presentation. Is the no SIM tray as big a deal as maybe some folks? In some places, it's being made out to be a big deal. In other places, it's just a natural evolution of things.
I do think it's the natural evolution of things, and I do think it falls into the about time category. So, I mean, first of all, those SIM trays, come on. They were small, they were fussy. I mean, we had one iPhone 4S, I think, that Tanya had, that actually, like, the SIM tray, like, it somehow got bent and it was a problem. I mean, like, there are holes in the phone for water. I mean, like, they're just a problem. They're not a good thing. Now, all that said, that's not the case if you need a SIM when you are, say, traveling internationally. You need to get a prepaid SIM that you buy in the airport or something along those lines. So I do think that we'll probably have, 1 to 3 years of potential pain in certain situations, but eSIM is just going to take over. It's just better in every way, as far as I'm aware, anyway. That you don't need these things, and Apple, like many cases with Apple, they're just like, yep, we're done, no more SIMs, deal with it. And it's only in the U.S. is my understanding. I don't know overseas. There may be different, which countries they have SIMs and which ones they don't. So clearly Apple is capable of producing it, but they want to draw a line in the sand, and sort of like they have done with numerous technologies, and said, okay, now you have to be this tall to play. And so that will change the world. Once eSIM is standard in all iPhones, and all US iPhones anyway have to use it, everything will work to will move to being eSIM savvy and eSIM friendly.
Yeah. We were sitting in on the Q&A before we started the live show here. And one thing I wanted to ask your thoughts on, were you surprised not to see USB-C appear in this phone?
I wasn't, but I wouldn't have been surprised if it did. I mean, I guess I was open to either happening. And I'm a little surprised, except for the fact that I think Apple does not like being pushed around. And I think that they feel that the whole EU thing is pushing them around. And so there's a level to which I suspect that they're going to resist to the extent that they can, and then at some point maybe it will simply not be worth it anymore. And I don't know when that will be. It's not clear to me that USB-C is really better than Lightning in any significant way for an iPhone. It's got higher bandwidth and stuff like that, but mostly that doesn't matter for the iPhone. So, and there's cost of materials, and again, it's a slightly different size port and all those kinds of things. So, plus Apple would probably feel like they had to start giving people, they would give them charges to give them cables. But so, yeah, it feels like the sort of thing where Apple is going to try to resist that for some amount of time. And then either Apple will just at some point cave and they'll have a reason why they've done it, or the world will have moved on to something else that's slightly better. But I don't know. USB-C does seem like it's here to stay for quite some time. So I don't know. It's a good question.
I'm kind of surprised at your answer. Because I've honestly, when I ask it, I wasn't even thinking about the EU situation.
Oh,
I was
really?
thinking.
I think that's the only reason why they're pushing.
Yeah, because right now the iPad. Let's see. Does the new iPad Mini? The new iPad Mini has USB-C. I think all the iPads have USB-C.
Not the plain model, I think.
Not the plain model.
Yeah.
But so I just wonder where we are in this transition. And now, listen, I can also completely understand because the USB-C standard is a bit of a mess.
Hey, USB-C 4 2.0. I mean, come on, 2 version numbers? Like, geez, does that mean we're up to USB 8? I can't remember. Do you multiply or do you divide?
Well, and does it charge or does it not charge? Does it sync or does it not sync? I mean, it is a mess, but at the same time, it definitely does give better bandwidth. So
no question. And part of where it gets fuzzy is also is that I mean, Apple's not really that into USB-C. Apple's into Thunderbolt, and so it does fall into the category of, like, I could see there even being different groups within Apple that would have very strong opinions about what their product needs in terms of Lightning, USB-C, or Thunderbolt. And there could be some fairly significant internal debates about, when battles between those divisions, such that, at some point, someone higher up than all of them will decree you're all doing X. But until that point, if they're evenly matched, they may just simply not, they may not be able to convince each other that the best way to do things would be, because they all believe they're doing it the best. So hard to know. I mean, that really is inside baseball.
Yeah, you're right. And I hadn't thought about it. You're taking a completely different angle at it. I hadn't even thought about the internal debates from the different Apple teams. And the photo and video people probably would love to see the bandwidth for USB-C. There are probably some other folks who would just as soon stick with Lightning. So,
right. And Brad mentioned in the chat, of course, USB-C in theory is Thunderbolt. USB 4 is Thunderbolt 4, so in theory, it's all sort of melding, but that's theory. And in practice, you've got cables, you've got controllers, you've got what you're connecting to on the other side, et cetera, et cetera. And so, that's where it starts to get pretty darn funky. And, I don't know if there's something that will help us simplify it. Because, that is part of Apple's thing, right? Apple really likes things to be simple and to not have to think. And that whole world with its different cables and things. Glenn Fleischman periodically writes articles for Tidbits, which take us like a week of editing and fact checking to even get close to publishing, because there's like so many freaking details surrounding USB and Thunderbolt and the cables and the connectors and what you can do. And, but did you know, Apple's still, I believe they're still shipping a USB-C charging cable with laptops, which means you can only do USB 2 data over it. Right. Yeah. Brad's not on. He's like, this is crazy. That's just a worthless cable, but it cuts the cost just a little bit for Apple. So it's worth them doing that. And so now you've got a cable which plugs in like everything else, but you can transfer data at a trickle. So it's just nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Before we move on from the phone, I want to know what you think about crash detection.
Ooh. Oh man, may you never have to use it. That's all. I will say the thing that surprised me of the whole crash detection. So Apple talks about how they put in new sensors. They've got like high G-force accelerometers. They've got they're doing barometric pressure changes. They're doing sound changes. All of this stuff that they're doing. And, they put in 1 million hours of machine learning to make sure that all the data told them there really was a crash. I'm like, I'm glad they did that much work, but really it's that hard to detect a car crash? Car crashes are pretty big deals usually. So maybe they're detecting really small car crashes too, but, a little fender bender. I don't know, but we'll see. It's just one of those things where I think it's good. Again, my mountain responder or EMT friend, he's like, anything that helps us get there faster. That's what it comes down to so often with the emergency services is anything that helps us get there faster. And, as a runner, when they added the fall detection to the Apple Watch, I had a couple of, trips and falls. I'm like, no, don't call. Because it does always alert you and give you some amount of time to cancel the call to emergency services. But, Apple did play they had a video early on in the event where it was nicely played, but it took a little bit to understand. Basically, they were playing, people telling their stories about how emergency SOS or something else in the Apple Watch basically saved their lives. And those are real. My wife's parents were just telling us this winter, we had a very cold and kind of slippery winter here in Ithaca, and an elderly friend of theirs was going for a walk in a city park, not, in the middle of nowhere or anything like that, but he was not super steady on his feet, and he slipped on ice and hit his head and was knocked out. And his Apple Watch called 911. And it was, I forget, it was like 20 degrees out and blowing, and, people were there within 10 minutes or something. And that was a really, really good thing, because had he, people were not necessarily walking by him, noticing that he had fallen and needed help. And so, I don't know that he would have had a better, problem, had to wait for someone else to call 911. But that was, there's no question that saved him in some significant way. So that's real. And I think the car crash detection is going to be exactly the same thing. There will be false alerts, but you will just say, yeah, no, it's fine. Don't call 911. And if you don't answer quickly enough, hey, there's worse things than the fire department coming and making sure you're okay. So, it's a good thing. So yeah, I'm totally in favor of that. And the same thing with the emergency SOS from satellite. I think, again, it's not going to be used a whole lot. Could be very, very small numbers of people who actually use it, but it's super, super cool they can do it. And, particularly like you make a mistake, right? You go for a hike somewhere where you shouldn't, you go too far, you get caught out without water, you're not wearing smart clothes, you twist an ankle badly, something like that. Mistakes, even if they're stupid mistakes like that, shouldn't be fatal. Like not in the modern world, it shouldn't be fatal. And so if that can prevent a stupid mistake from being fatal, great. That's a good thing. And I am really curious if we can use you will be able to use Find My to manually update your location. And we have lots of places there's no cell service around here. So I'm planning to go out in the woods and go, okay, Tanya, can you see where I am now? And manually upload my location via the satellite just to see that will be the one way that you can see if it works without actually calling emergency services.
Yeah, I've shared this story on the show before, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but a few weeks ago, my girlfriend took a bad fall and ended up, it ended up not being a problem, but it could have been very, very bad. And she was not even aware that the watch had called emergency services. But it called emergency services, and it notified her sister, and it notified me. And and it's when you get that alert, it's kind of a strange thing. It's like, what? And
did you get a screenshot of that? I've never seen one of those.
I didn't even think about it, Adam. But it was very, very interesting. It's like, and you start to call, and when she didn't answer, it's like, okay, this is real, and something bad happened. The other interesting thing, I'll share this too, that I did not know about. Once it did the alert, then I was able to watch her, not video, but watch her location change as the ambulance took her from where she fell to the hospital. So it's like, I know at any given moment I knew where she was, and if obviously by ambulance is fine, but if she'd been in the woods or somewhere lost, it would have helped you, track that. So it's a very, very cool feature, and you don't know you're going to need it until you need it.
Yeah, precisely.
Adam and the Long Island Mac user group are back in the next edition of Mac Voices, where Adam talks more about some of Apple's far-out announcements, including the Apple Watch Ultra and the new AirPods. That's next time on Mac Voices. I hope we see you then. Until then, and as always, I'm Chuck Joiner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.